quiet morning coffee. That was all he wanted. But for Special Agent in Charge Raymond Sterling, a 20-year veteran of the Bureau and the head of the multi-agency gang task force, a simple latte was about to turn into the most expensive mistake the Oak Haven Police Department ever made. Officer Brett Hatcher thought he saw a suspect fitting a description. What he actually saw was his own career going up in flames. He didn't know the man he was shoving against the counter had the power to indict his entire precinct. He didn't know the handcuffs he was tightening were effectively locking the city into a $5.6 million lawsuit. This is the story of how arrogance met authority and why you never judge a book or a man in a tailored suit by its cover. The air inside the Roasted Bean on 4th and Main always smelled of burnt sugar and damp raincoats. It was a Tuesday in November, the kind of morning that bit at your exposed skin, grey and unrelenting. Raymond Sterling stood near the back of the line, checking his emails on a secure government-issued smartphone. At 45, Ray moved with the distinct economized energy of a man who had spent 2 decades navigating high-pressure environments. He was 6'2" black, with broad shoulders that filled out his charcoal Brooks Brothers suit. He wasn't wearing a tie today. He was technically on leave for the next 3 hours before a briefing with the mayor, but Ray didn't really do off-duty. He swiped a finger across the screen, archiving a briefing from D.C. regarding a RICO predicate involving the chaotic Southside Kings gang. Ray was the Special Agent in Charge, SAC, for the regional field office. He wasn't just a Fed. He was the guy the other Feds called when the red tape got too thick to cut with scissors. He had a badge, a firearm on his hip concealed beneath his jacket, and a clearance level that could open doors at the Pentagon. But right now, he was just a guy who wanted a double-shot espresso. Next, the barista a college kid with purple hair named Chloe called out. Ray stepped up, offering a polite, tired smile. "Double-shot espresso black, and a blueberry muffin, please. For here or to go?" "To go. I've got a meeting across town." As Ray tapped his card on the reader, the bell above the coffee shop door chimed aggressively. It wasn't the gentle tinkle of a customer. It was the heavy shove of authority. Ray didn't turn around immediately. Years of undercover work and surveillance had taught him that turning your head was a tell. Instead, he watched the reflection in the polished chrome of the espresso machine. 2 uniformed officers entered. The first was Officer Brett Hatcher. He was a stocky man in his early 30s, with a buzz cut that was a week too long, and a uniform that looked like it was straining to contain his chest. He walked with his thumbs hooked into his duty belt, a posture that screamed territorial dominance. He had a reputation in the Oak Haven PD, though Ray didn't know it yet. Hatcher was known as a stat padder, a cop who prioritized arrest numbers over procedural integrity. Trailing behind him was Officer Leora Jenkins. She looked young, maybe 23, with a ponytail that bobbed nervously as she scanned the room. She held a radio in her hand, the volume turned down low, but the static was still audible in the quiet shop. Dispatch said the subject was in the area. Hatcher said, his voice loud enough to carry. He wasn't talking to Jenkins. He was announcing his presence to the room. Black male, 6-foot, dark clothing. Robbery at the convenience store on 8th. Ray frowned slightly at the reflection. He was wearing a charcoal suit, not dark clothing, in the colloquial sense of a hoodie or streetwear, and 8th Street was 4 blocks away. He picked up his receipt and moved to the waiting area, leaning against the high wooden counter. He took a sip of water from the courtesy cup, his eyes scanning the street outside. He knew the stats. He knew the tension in the city. Oak Haven was a powder keg, and the FBI had been monitoring the local PD for a pattern of civil rights violations. Ironically, that was exactly what Ray's meeting with the mayor was about later that afternoon. Hatcher moved through the coffee shop, his eyes darting from table to table. He bypassed a white man in a black hoodie sitting in the corner with a laptop. He ignored a Latino man in a dark windbreaker near the door. His eyes locked on Raymond Sterling. Ray felt the weight of the gaze. It was a physical sensation, a prickling on the back of his neck. He took a breath, centering himself. Don't engage unless necessary. You're a civilian right now. Hatcher marched over his boots, thudding heavily on the laminate floor. He stopped 3 feet from Ray, invading his personal space, just enough to be aggressive without making contact. You, Hatcher said. No, sir. No, excuse me. Just a command. Ray turned slowly, his face a mask of calm professionalism. He held his phone in one hand, the other resting loosely at his side. Can I help you, officer? Let me see some ID. Hatcher barked, his hand drifting dangerously close to his holster. Ray raised an eyebrow. Is there a problem? We've got a report of a robbery. You fit the description. Ray paused. He looked down at his $3,000 suit, his polished Oxfords, and the luxury watch on his wrist. The description was a man in a suit. Description was a black male, 6 foot dark clothes. Hatcher snapped his face, reddening slightly. He didn't like being questioned. Stop stalling. ID now. Jenkins, the rookie, stepped up slightly behind Hatcher. She looked uncomfortable. Hatcher, the suspect, was reported wearing a hoodie and jeans. She murmured, barely audible. I got this Jenkins, Hatcher hissed over his shoulder, not breaking eye contact with Ray. He turned back to Ray, a sneer forming. You think because you dress up you can't be a suspect. I know how you guys operate. Try to blend in. Ray's blood pressure ticked up a notch, but his pulse remained steady. You guys. The phrase hung in the air, heavy and toxic. Officer. Ray said, his voice dropping an octave, becoming the voice of command he used to direct raids. I'm going to reach into my inner jacket pocket to retrieve my wallet. Inside my wallet is my identification. I'm informing you of my movements, so there is no confusion. Don't you tell me what you're doing, Hatcher countered, stepping closer. Turn around. Hands on the counter. I am not refusing to identify myself, Ray said, standing his ground. But I am not going to be treated like a criminal. I have identification right here. I said hands on the counter, Hatcher yelled. The coffee shop went silent. The espresso machine hissed a sharp sound in the sudden vacuum of noise. Chloe the barista stopped wiping a cup, her eyes wide. Ray looked at Hatcher. He saw the adrenaline in the officer's eyes, the dilation of the pupils. This was a man looking for a fight. A man who wanted resistance so he could justify force. Ray had a choice. He could flash his badge now. He could pull the leather wallet out, flip it open, and watch the color drain from Hatcher's face. It would end this instantly. But Ray was a supervisor. He was an investigator. And right now he was witnessing a civil rights violation in real time. If Hatcher was willing to do this to a man in a suit in a crowded coffee shop, what was he doing to the kids in the projects at 2 a.m. when no one was watching? Ray decided to let it play out. He needed the evidence. I am complying, Ray said softly. He turned slowly and placed his hands on the counter. The moment Ray's palms touched the cold wood of the pickup counter, Hatcher moved. He didn't just pat Ray down, he slammed into him. Hatcher's forearm drove into Ray's lower back, pinning him against the counter with unnecessary force. Hey, a customer shouted from the back, the guy with the laptop. He didn't do anything. Back off, Hatcher screamed, spinning his head around, spit flying. Police business. Stay back, or you're next for obstruction. Ray winced as his hip bone ground against the edge of the counter. Officer. Ray said, his voice tight but controlled. This is excessive. I have offered my ID. You are escalating a consensual encounter into a detainment without probable cause. Shut up. You're detained, Hatcher growled. He kicked Ray's legs apart, spreading them wide. He was rough, his hands grabbing at Ray's waistband, feeling for a weapon. Officer Jenkins was hovering, looking terrified. Hatcher. Maybe we should just check his ID first. He's reaching, Hatcher lied loudly. He wasn't talking to Jenkins. He was shouting for the benefit of the witnesses and the security cameras he knew were rolling. Stop reaching. I'm not moving, Ray stated clearly. He knew exactly what Hatcher was doing. It was an old trick, shout commands that contradict the reality to cover yourself on the recording. Stop resisting when the suspect is still. Stop reaching when the hands are visible.